And so a summary of that, or a local interpretation of everything I just said, taken from the HUD NOFO, is this is in the header of the Westchester COC rank and review process, which states, in order for the Westchester County Continuum of Care to prioritize programs that are most effectively serving the community at the local level, the community has implemented a rank and review process for new and renewal projects. This project uses objective criteria and where available past performance to gain knowledge of project effectiveness within this full COC system. So that is the purpose. We are trying to use data to fairly rank projects to indicate to ourselves and to HUD what should gain new funding or what should be refunded. Any questions about what we've talked about so far, the purpose of rank and the annual rank and review process? Great. So let's look at the process that we used last year. We have tweaked the process from year to year. We've been using something pretty similar for several years now, since HUD somewhat changed their requirements. But so 2023, 2024 were pretty similar, but we'll look at the last one, obviously, that the 2025 process, if there is one, could be a slightly different, depending on what the COC board decides. But the 2024 process, there were a total of 73 points. The highest score that a project could get is 73 points. Let's look at the sources of the points. There were 15 or so criteria that gave those points to projects. Okay, so the first several criteria as shown there are the system performance measures, related criteria, as we just showed. HUD requires, SOFT requires, by giving points to COCs that use system performance measures in their rank and review process. So those measures that we use are exits to permanent housing, or if a client didn't exit, retention in permanent housing, exits to homelessness, increased earned income, employment income, and increased total income. And the sources, we'll discuss this more later, the sources of those data are the APR, the annual performance report that is submitted for each project, question 23C, and then the system performance measures 4.1 and 4.3. And you can see on the right side of this table, all four of these criteria are worth from 0 to 5 points. There are slightly different scoring rubrics for projects that are permanent supportive housing and for projects that offer only temporary housing, housing of temporary duration, rapid rehousing, and transitional housing. But for all of these, 0 to 5 points, depending on how successful a project is at keeping clients in permanent housing or increasing their sources of income. The next several set of criteria are project performance related factors. These are objective performance related criteria about a project. They're not system level. don't affect other projects, but they are inherent in a project. That the utilization rate, meaning how full the project is relative to the number of households promised to HUD. That data comes from APR question 8B. The documentation of persistent eligibility, that takes a random sample of homelessness, documentation of homelessness from the project, and looks to see if how many of those, what percentage of those meet HUD standards. HMIS data quality, that comes from APR Q6, and 1 point is deducted from the maximum 5 for any data element. There are about 15 or so listed in Q6 for each data element that has an error rate above 5%, 5% or higher. APR timelessness, that's only worth 2 points, but for each of the last 2 years was the APR on time, and the percentage of granted funds that were spent, with the full 5 points for this criteria given to projects that spend all of their funds, and proportionally less for projects that have funds returned and recaptured to HUD. Any questions about these first couple of sets of criteria? What they mean, where the data comes from? Okay, obviously APR timeliness, that comes most authoritatively from SAGE, which is the HUD system through which we submit the APRs to HUD, and the amount of funds used comes from LOCKS, which is the HUD system through which we claim the COC funding from HUD. All right, the last set of 5 or 6 criteria deal with the inherent characteristics of the project. These don't really change year to year. They're set by what type of project it is and the promises made in the project application to HUD. So the first of these criteria is it's binary, 5 points, or no, actually it's not binary, but it is a full 5 points if the entire project is dedicated to serve one of those high need, or at least but severe need, as the HUD term, populations, youth, DV, families, chronically homeless, veterans, substance abuse, LGBTQ, and health or behavioral health challenges. We then have a 10-point criteria. PSH or RRH projects are given 10 points, 5 points for transitional housing, and 0 points for, except for coordinated entry, get 0 points. And Housing First projects are in HUD up until now, has over the last 10 years, has strongly encouraged projects to be permanent housing projects to be housing first. So we give 5 bonus points, or 5 points for projects that are housing first, use the housing first model, and 3 points for projects that meet our local coordinated entry benchmarks for moving clients rapidly after they are referred into housing. There are 3 of those benchmarks, and for each benchmark that is met, the project gets 1 point. That's really the only, as we'll see, the only thing in these first 3 that changes year to year. The others are inherent in a project. Okay, the last three have to do with compliance with local COC. Of course, all projects are required to attend the Coordinating Entry Referral Committees, the CERCs, either PSH CERC for a PSH project or Rapid Rehousing CERC for RRH projects. So there's 2 points for consistent attendance at those at the CERCs. The last criteria is attendance by both the recipient and the subrecipient for the project at COC board meetings, since all recipients and subrecipients are COC board members. And finally, the most recent criteria is compliance with the COC LGBTQ plus inclusion policy. All COC recipients and subrecipients are required to have a inclusion policy that they have implemented and filed with the COC, and that is worth 3 points. So any questions about this last set of criteria? Okay. Great. So this slide, this table, shows the result of the rankings from last year. So it's the scores and subsequent rank for all of the renewals and new projects that we submitted to HUD last year. You can see by COC policy, the HMIS grant and the coordinated entry grant, which all projects need and use to function, are ranked 1 and 2 automatically. The COC planning grant by HUD decision is not ranked, isn't any rank, but all the other projects are then ranked from 3 to 19 on this table. For the renewal projects, that's based on the score out of 73 points using the criteria that we just went over together. So you can see the highest ranked project, well, the highest ranked renewal project, except for HMIS and coordinated entry, at rank number 3 was CMVRA06. It got 66.5 points out of that 73. So it's a little better than 90%. And the lowest ranked project, renewal project, was Stepping Stones with 41.9 points. And the other projects, that was ranked number 17 out of 17 renewals at the bottom. And then the COC board decided that the new projects that used funds from new money, possible new money, bonus money, were placed at the bottom below the renewals, except for this small homestead expansion that was placed right under homestead. So you can see this is the results we did, and the color coding there on this table shows where the line between tier 1 and tier 2 is. Tier 1, all of the rows with a white background are tier 1. The yellow background is tier 2, and the orange turning point, which is in orange, was about 2/3, 3/4 in tier 1, and about 1/4 of turning point funding within tier 2. So the ranking did what it was designed to do. It gave us scores for every project, which we then used to rank them from high performing to low performing into tier 1 and tier 2. Any questions about these results? Great. So this is a summary of one of the columns, the source of data, the sources of the ranking data. As we already discussed, well, it kind of reorganizes them. But as we mentioned before, some of the criteria, the objective data comes from the APR, specifically APR question 6, APR 8B, question 8B, and APR question 23C. We'll look momentarily about how to run an APR for your project to get that data. Two criteria are taken from the system performance measures, namely the system performance measure 4 with data 4.1 and 4.3. As we mentioned, there are other sources of data that don't come from HMIS, the homeless documentation sample, the APR submission records, financial information, and then the scope of the project in the project application for the target population and whether it's housing first, of course, attendance at board meetings and CERC meetings. For those criteria, the coordinated benchmark report, which also comes from HMIS, for those 3 points, and then finally, whether or not the LGBTQ plus inclusion policy has been filed on time. Right, and as we said, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 come from HMIS, and then the other half come from other records. And well, okay, and what I'm trying to indicate on this slide is where a agency trying to rank themselves, give themselves a rank from 0 to 73 could get this information. You have the same access to data in HMIS that the COC does, so you can generate those same HMIS reports. Obviously, you have access to your own client files and can take a sample of your own homeless documentation to see how compliant you are. Even if you don't have access to Sage, but you we do talk about whether APRs are submitted on time at the provider meetings, the APR trackers that are discussed at the provider meetings every month, and of course, there is an email that goes out when an APR is submitted. You may not have access to locks, but you do have access to your own budget records to know how much of the grant of your subcontract you claimed. And then you have internal records for attendance at meetings and the inclusion policy. So next we're going to look at how to generate for the, so I think most of that is self-explanatory, how to get your client files or attendance records, financial records. You all know how to get that from your own agency, but we'll look now at how to get those 3 reports, the APR, the system performance measure, and the coordinated entry benchmark report out of ClientTrack for your own project. Any questions? As we're doing that, I'm going to switch, therefore, from PowerPoint to web browser to look, so we can look at ClientTrack together.
can see it.
Okay, here we are in HMIS. All of these reports are found on the Reports tab of Client Track. So as we said, there are 3 reports: APR, System Performance Manager, and Coordinated Benchmark Report. The first of those, the APR, is found in the HMIS exports folder. You can see the second choice there is CSV APR fiscal year 2024. That's the current APR. So to create an APR, you'll choose that option. You'll use the default date range since this date last year, since that's how the actual ranking is done, using the previous 12 months. You'll choose your own agency as your organization, grant program, right, from this list. And we're going to be generating these reports for DCMH RAP, which has 6 agencies as providers. But obviously, if you're generating for your agency, we'll just make that one selection. Grant program, of course, is HUD COC, HUD Continuum of Care. And then you'll select the appropriate component, either permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing. Pick the grant, in this case, which is whatever project you are trying to do your internal ranking for. In this case, DCMH RAP. And then once you've chosen the grant, you could also filter by project. Again, selecting permanent supportive housing, and then choosing all of the RAP sub-projects here. Okay. Okay, and then once you're ready to create the APR, you'll hit this blue Run Export button at the bottom of the screen. So you're choosing your own agency, HUD COC as the program, the proper component, either permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing, and then choosing the grant and project that you want to rank and run the export. Make sure that this generate validation file is left checked, and then you can hit run export. You hit the button, you will want to unencrypt the export and assume full responsibility, and then done, and the APR will run. The APR is an asynchronous report. That means it takes a while to generate, and then the files are eventually available for download. APR takes about 25 minutes to run. So you can wait to run the other reports while you're waiting. So we can look at that. we won't have to wait in this meeting. I've already run the reports a couple days ago, so we can look at the previously generated reports. So that's the APR. It's under HMIS exports, APR FY 2024. The system performance measures are under the second folder, HMIS reports. See them here, system performance measures FY 24. We have to choose a source for running the system performance measure. In client track, we have to choose a source endpoint. You'll always choose Westchester County. And the date range is the same as the APR since this date last year. You'll recall these ranking criteria that we used last year only used performance measure 4, SysPM number 4. We used 4. We'll actually be looking at data from 4.1 and 4.3. So from this list of which measure we want to run, we will choose performance measure 4. You'll choose your organization. It should actually be chosen by default already, but for us, we'll add all of the wrap providers. Filter by program, choose wrap. Wrap projects. Grant each wrap and hit report. Any questions about generating the APR or the SysPM? SysPM is a synchronous report. It only takes a short while and then opens in a daughter window like so. It says it's ready. Okay, this is SysPM performance measure 4, 3 pages. See, there's a cover page, and then measures 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 are on the second page, and 4.4 and 4.5 are on page 3. Once you've generated this report, you can either take the data from it directly or export the data, say, to a PDF if you want to keep it for later. And again, the measures, the we generated only system performance measure 4, and specifically we will look at 4.1 and 4.3. The final data we're going to get for the ranking from HMIS is the coordinated entry benchmark report. That is found in the third subfolder in the report tab under enrollment report. You could see it's the fourth choice there, CE benchmark report. For the date range, we'll once again choose since this date last year. And we'll choose the project that we're trying to rank. In this case, it's all of the rank providers. If you're running it for your own agency, you'll choose your own agency's project or projects. Okay, and then hit the blue button for report. This is a relatively quick report. Here we go. Okay, this is a one-pager. You can see all of the coordinated entry benchmarks listed for all of these providers. Of course, and there is a total row at the bottom. And as we'll show more readily in a moment, it's the first, second, and last benchmarks that are used for this in the ranking criteria. And once again, you can export to Excel or PDF to keep for later. Any questions about how to generate any of these 3 reports from which data is taken for the ranking from ClientTrack? Great. I'm glad that I am very clear. Expand. Okay. Switching back to PowerPoint. Oh, wait, stop. Okay, so as we've been doing, we're going to use those reports that we just generated for DCMH RAP as our example project. If we wanted to do an internal ranking to see how DCMH RAP does during the ranking process to try to improve our performance or to check your work, we will generate those 3 reports from HMIS as we just did together, and then use that information to plug into the ranking criteria that we discussed 20 minutes ago. So on this slide are APR Q8B and the specific, you'll recall Q8B, APR question 8B is the housing utilization rate criteria. So this question, the total column, the leftmost column in Q8B is the total number of households served in the last Wednesday in January, April, July, and October over the last 12 months. So the instructions for the criteria is to average those four numbers, and then to get a percentage, divide that by the target number. For DCMH RAP, the target number is 510. You can see that the average will be 460.5 from the over the last 12 months for DCMH RAP. And the other export from the APR, that's APR Q23C, that shows exit destinations from DCMH RAP. There are two questions that take criteria that take data from this part of the APR. The first is positive exits. Which is, you can see 52% in the bottom there where I've highlighted, and then exits to homelessness, which is the number of exits in the first section, homeless situations exits, which you can see there were 14 exits to homelessness from DCMH RAP over the last 12 months. Any questions about using these two questions? What specific numbers to use for the APR for the ranking? Not. The other three questions used. Other question that is used for the ranking is APR Q6. APR Q6 is Q6A, Q6B, and Q6C. All of which have report on data quality. And then in the rightmost column for each of those 15 or so data elements reported, there is an error rate. And you can see for DCMH RAP over the last 12 months, there's only one of those criteria that had an error rate above 5%, 0.0569 for income at annual assessment. Okay. This is the system performance measure report that we just generated from HMIS for DCMH RAP. Specifically measure 4, but metrics 4.1 and 4.3. You can see 4.1 gives us a percentage of adults with increased employment income. Earned income is 6%. And the percentage of adult participants who have increased income from any source is 44%. Any questions about this, how to get numbers from the system performance measure report we generated? Okay, and finally, the third report we generated from Client Track was the coordinated entry benchmark report. I alluded to this earlier, but the three benchmarks that are used for the ranking are the number of days from median number of days from referral to acknowledge, median number of days from referral to accepting or rejecting the referral. Those are the first two benchmarks, and then the third is the rightmost benchmark, the amount of median number of days from accepting the referral to the move-in date. And so I've highlighted those. We use the total at the bottom, of course, and looks DCMH wrap. The target for acknowledging referral, of course, is 3 days. As you know, DCMH wrap providers did that well. The second target is 30 days. DCMH wrap providers succeeded there, and the target for housing, moving into housing from acceptance is 60 days, and wrap was successful at that. So that's 3 out of 3 benchmarks met. Okay, so we can then use the data that we just took from HMIS and the data that the project characteristics and data we have from our financial records to score DCMH wrap on the 16 criteria, adding up to a score out of 73 points. We can compare these statistics to the rubrics given in the rank and review process. So 52% exits, permanent housing is 0, exits to homelessness 28%, 0, increased participant income 6% is worth 4 points, increased participant total income 44% is 3 points. The 90%, just over 90% housing utilization rate is 4.5 points. The last time this was done, 20 out of 23 client files had compliant documentation of homelessness, so that's 86.9% worth 4.4 points. HMIS data quality, APR timelessness has been both were submitted on time over the last 2 years. We spent 92.6% for FY 2023, which is the last grant that has an APR submitted. 4.63%, 176. I should actually be out of 510. 176 out of 510 beds are targeted to one of the special populations. So DCMH wrap always gets 1.72 points on the specialized population services criteria, project components, PSH. That should be 10, not 5. I apologize. Housing first. DCMH wrap is housing first, and it has full participation in CERC's LGBT plus inclusion policy compliance and board attendance for that total score. Okay. That concludes this presentation. Haven't been any questions so far. Are there any questions before we wrap up? Anybody want more information about purpose of rank review, what the criteria are, or how to generate data from HMIS or other sources? Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yoav.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.